If you've seen my videos, you know that I'm new to YouTube. I'm new to all the videos, I'm new to where to stand and how to do the lighting and what to do with my audio, and I'm still learning. But I'm not new to mothering. I'm not new to children. I'm not new to figuring out how to be happy at home. Let me give you the secrets. Let me show you how to access the antidepressant hidden inside of you. It changed my life, and it can change yours too. If you were climbing Mount Everest, would you rather read a guidebook and then take yourself, or get a guide who'd actually been there before? If you had a specialty car and it was broken, would you rather go to somebody who'd read the manual and could tell you exactly what you needed to do to fix it, or someone who worked on cars like that all the time? If you had a broken marriage, would you rather go to somebody who'd read all the books and could tell you all the right things to do, but never had a long-term successful relationship of their own? Or would you rather take advice from somebody who had a long-standing, successful, and happy relationship? I've been there. Fractured marriage, parenting struggles, overwhelmed as a mother, and I've found a way to a peaceful, happy home, a thriving, invested marriage, and a baseline of happiness, peace, and enjoyment as a mother, while still having babies and toddlers as well as teenagers now, a husband who works often long hours away, and more homeschooling responsibilities and pressures than ever. Let me tell you, depression. Sometimes it's the sadness, it's the tears, the overwhelming emotion that just won't stop, the heaviness, the pain. But I actually think the worst is the numbness, the blankness, the emotional flatlining, or the rage that just flares out of nowhere at one little remark, one little request, like this last straw on the camel's back that just bursts into a flaming bonfire. The exhaustion that ties you to the bed even after you've slept and slept, but you just want to go to sleep and never wake up. The never-ending turning over and over in your mind until you feel like you just want to beat your head against the wall to make it stop. I've been there. I've been to all those places. Depression isn't pretty, and it's hard on everyone around it. But particularly when mothers are depressed, it is hard on their whole family. And antidepressant medication is actually only slightly more helpful than a placebo, and only in really severe cases. Plus it has the withdrawals and the adjustment to deal with, and the after effects. So how do we escape the crippling crutches of depression? Well, for me, it started with one question. I was listening to a podcast, and I heard the speaker say, "What are you pretending not to know about your life?" And at the time, I was 6 weeks postpartum, tears flowing down my face as I drove to my postpartum appointment, and I felt a rage come over me. What am I pretending not to know about my life? I felt like, what an offensive thing to say. I'm not pretending not to know anything. But once the rage passed, the question stuck with me. What are you pretending not to know about your life? What am I avoiding not seeing about my situation? As it turned over and over in my mind, I began to see things that I hadn't seen before. Things that had seemed too threatening, perhaps, too overwhelming to face. Things that had been pushed aside, that had been not even noticed in the moment, because I'm a non-confrontational person. I like peace. I like order. I like the people that I love to be at ease and to get along. But in the doing of that, I had sacrificed some very important things about myself and my own mental health. So it comes back to this. Many times, the deepest root of depression is actually anger. We can ask ourselves, what am I not allowed to be angry about? Maybe someone else taught you as a child not to be angry, and maybe you took it on yourself as a protective way to keep the peace for your own psyche. But where am I hiding my anger from myself? Where am I avoiding confronting the reality that is not what it should be? Journaling or talking to a trusted friend can be an extremely important way to gain perspective on things, especially if you're like I was, when I had such a strong habit of pushing it under my mental bed, so to speak, without even realizing I was doing it. When I was in the worst of my marriage crisis, I had a dear friend who would go on walks with me and very uncomfortably push me to see some of the ways that my marriage was not working for either of us, but particularly for me. And as she lent me her perspective, not that it was always right or a full truth, but as she lent me her perspective, I was able to open my eyes more completely to what was actually happening. Because you can't address anything until you can see it. And emotional suppression doesn't just hurt the person who is suppressing, it bounces out to our partners. It transmits generationally. They say by the third generation of emotional suppression and trauma, children can be seen doing it as young as preschool. This is not what we want for our children. In fact, that's one reason I started this channel, because I believe that children deserve the freedom of living their own lives, not saddled with the baggage of their parents and their grandparents and these generational curses that come if we don't look honestly and openly at them. But it's not just freezing or blowing up into anger. There's another thing called fawning. There's flight and freeze, but there's also fawning, which is basically just going along with someone else's plan. Basically, it's just, it's okay, we'll just do whatever you want, keeping the peace, making everybody else happy. It seems like a good thing, and it can be helpful. I don't want to villainize it, because all of these things are coping skills that at least made us feel safe once upon a time. But when you get to a certain stage, you realize fawning, going along, is actually just building up a debt of honesty. An appropriate fight response isn't contention, it isn't abuse. It's obviously not aimed at children and not using them as pawns to get our way. In fact, an appropriate fighting response is not about winning or losing at all. It's about connecting. It's about getting to the truth. I'm not talking about screaming, yelling, emotional expression that's frightening and over the top. I'm talking about standing in your own empowerment, speaking the truth of your experience, being heard and appropriately received. Dr. Terry Real teaches a lot about fighting fair that I've found to be incredibly helpful. If you want to check him out, he's a great resource. And what's more, it makes us more trustworthy. It makes us trustworthy to ourselves when we know that we have our own back. It makes us more trustworthy to our partner, even if they don't like it at first. And if you have been a person who's been a fawner or a freezer, I can guarantee you that standing up in your power, speaking out your truth will not be pleasant for your partner at first. But it makes you more trustworthy. It makes you more attractive because you're showing up in your whole power. And good people actually want to be around other people like that, even if it's challenging, even if it's uncomfortable at first. And of course, it makes us more trustworthy to our children, because instead of displacing our uncomfortable feelings onto them or on situations around us, we deal with them at the root, and we are honest about what is actually affecting us and how we're feeling about it. And it teaches them to do the same thing. And it makes us more resilient. Knowing that we will stand up for ourselves allows us to go through harder things, allows us to be more flexible, because we know that if we need to, we can stand up. If we need to, we can lay a boundary. If we need to, we can be heard. And so we can play around with things that might feel uncomfortable in a different way from just being a doormat. Resentment can be an important signal. It's a sign to look at the situation again, not to blame someone else for it, but to see where we are self-betraying. This was so important to me because I found myself incredibly able to stuff my feelings, my negative anger and aggressive feelings, without even knowing I was doing it. It was like a clue. I could follow the smoke back until I found the smoldering fire. If you want to know more about that story and how that played out for me, go click on my video about how I burnt out and what's helping me learn to feel like myself again. But in applying these principles, really it's honesty. Honesty with myself, honesty with my spouse, honesty with my children, not inappropriate honesty, not oversharing, not blaming other people, but being willing and taking the time to look at those hard things and to deal with them straightforwardly. Dr. Mindy Pelz is another person that I love, and she talked about having a date with grief every morning. And for me, it wasn't so much a date with grief. It was a date with anger. The hard emotions that we don't deal with, The hard emotions that we avoid don't just go away. They stick around and they just clog up our mind and our spirit and our relationships and even our body. Our immune system responds as we suppress these things by suppressing other things. And we're much more likely to have immune response difficulties, autoimmune problems, as we suppress. I think Dr. Gabor Mate is the one who calls it appropriate anger is our emotional immune response system. And it doesn't just bother us. As mothers, of course, our suppressed emotions, our lack of ability or willingness to look at these hard things ripples down onto our children. We don't want that for them. We want them to be free. We want them to deal with their own hard things that life gives them because it's going to. But we don't want to hand them our hard things. It can seem overwhelming to open this Pandora's box, to face the ugliness that might fly out at us. But you're stronger than you know. It's the work of heroes to face life and to face ourselves honestly. And I tell you, it will change your life as it has mine. I have a level of freedom and peace within myself and in my marriage and as a mother in my home that seemed only a dream before I approached this, before I learned to use this skill of honest and open communication. I have a self-respect and a level of respect for my husband and children that seemed like it had been quietly eroding away throughout my motherhood journey. But it's there and it's strong, and that's what I want for every mother and every daughter growing up to see that in her mother. Depression for me now is like a dark cloud, fast disappearing in the rearview mirror. Grab my free masterclass below on more practical ways to care for yourself so you can be truly happy at home again.